everybody.
Yo!
Sup, fam?
Oh, man. Oh, man.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean it.
Yeah?
A lot of people think I'm just joking when I say that.
Cool.
What's going on, everybody? Everybody have a good weekend?
It was
Ryan's
awesome.
weekend was so good he had to leave the mic.
No, I had to lean over and turn up the monitor because I could barely hear. No, it was good. I rode bikes. I played Dance Dance Revolution. That's about it. It was great.
Yeah,
I think the next time that we are in the same place, or that you're in the same place in an arcade with Dance Dance Revolution, my wife would like to challenge you.
Man, can I talk some real stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on!
I can't think of a single thing in recent memory that that drove home the difference of 20 years than playing Dance Dance Revolution, because I was like, oh, I'm sure I'll forget, how I seem to remember this one has a lot of gallops in it and this, that, and the other thing. And I started playing, and halfway through I realized that I was getting it back and I knew the moves, and it wasn't a reaction time or whatever thing. Like I had practiced this song, for years and years, but quite physically, my mid-40s old man body could not keep up, and I got to the point where my heart was racing and I was missing beats, not for a lack of skill, but for a lack of physical capability. And I was just like, that's interesting. And
So
that's
is that
not
like
that's
a
not me
yes,
trying to
like
cry or
you
whine.
will?
What's that?
Is that so? So you will accept a challenge or not?
Oh man, are you kidding me? I'll totally accept a challenge. Yeah.
All right, good. It's on then.
Also, one thing I've come to recognize about old DDR and Bimani games is that they had no idea what they were doing for that first 10 years or so of making step charts. So, you go back and, play... I saw the video of you doing Dynamite Rave.
Yeah.
But you go back and play a lot of those older songs and oh, man, they were just kind of...
They were just, throwing arrows around.
Whatever.
Well, and
because you
that's
play the newer stuff now, and it's very, flow-oriented.
It's very clear they have a dance. Yeah, and there was, from that generation, maybe 5 songs that actually felt like they were telling a story with their feet, One of them would be Hysteria, does a bunch of, there's this one moment where during the chorus you go up and left, back and right, up and right, back and left. And so you're kind of doing this front and back dance thing, and then doing the gallops where you go ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. But those were very rare. You're so right.
Yeah.
So what do you say? Are we gonna have to fight whether it's gonna be Beatmania or Dance Dance Revolution in the warehouse? because that thought did occur to me. We could just straight up get the real deal.
I mean, whatever. I will say it's easier to rig up a nice Stepmania machine than to rig up a good Beatmania copycat machine. You should go to the UFO arcade that we go to a lot, because they have a Stepmania machine with a bunch of custom songs and all the old DDR stuff on it.
As long as we're a unified front that screw Pump It Up, right?
Oh yeah, fuck Pump It Up.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
No
okay,
one
yeah.
wants to Pump It Up. They got Pump It Up at the
somebody
arcade.
on
I was
in public on Twitter just said Pump It Up better than. I was just like, what are you, crazy?
No,
this
that's
is
insane.
come on.
Oh, I really like.
I didn't know that we get to bond on this. This is amazing.
I was dancing to public domain orchestra music. Oh, this is great. I love it. Thanks, guys.
Although you could make a case for, the X being a more, if you're constantly facing forward, but
I guess so. But the other problem with Pump It Up is that they don't color the notes for the timing. They color them for the orientation, and so you're only telling rhythm visually or distance wise. Hey everybody, this is
rhythm game things.
Okay. I am good to go whenever you are, Andrew.
I am ready.
Okay. Well, if you're good to go, then take it away in 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to the Weird Things Podcast. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Brian Brushwood.
hello, beautiful people.
Justin Robert Young.
Oh, hi, friends. How are you?
Mr. Bryce Castillo.
Oh, hey, that's me. Hi, everybody.
Gentlemen, a lot of news, a lot of things to talk about, which, always my job is I gotta narrow it all down. Real quick item, NASA is probably set to reveal today, if they haven't already, news about Voyager 2.
Wait, well, what news could there possibly be? Oh, that it made it past the edge, the boundary of the end of space?
It reached the end of space. It met the face of God.
It's at the restaurant at the end of the universe.
When reached for comment, the face of God said, "Ow."
Yeah. It has probably apparently left what we consider the edge of the solar system, so now it's in interstellar space.
Oh, wow.
So it is our second interstellar craft.
So we got only 4 more to go until we create Voyager to take on the Enterprise.
Oh, is Voyager 6?
Yeah, it was Voyager 6, which of course there is not one, but that was canonically what Voyager was in that movie.
It's not yet a Voyager 6, Brian.
I know. Look, that's what I'm saying. That's why we now have an agenda. We just got to make sure Voyager 6 is a really good one.
We're on the road. The roadmap has been established.
Yeah, which cool. More of this. Speaking of more in space, Elon Musk, he may not be somebody many of you are familiar with. I think we've talked about him once or twice here before, but that's kind of the extent of it. This guy's not really in the news much, and so he's kind of just really keeps his head down and just works on innovations and things. He made some revelations about what was first the interstellar the interplanetary transport system, the ITS.
The ITS.
Which then became the BFR, the big
friendly
Falcon
rocket.
Falcon rocket, which is now being called Starship. Starship's the upper stage, the lower stage of the boosters, the super heavy booster or super heavy. So anyhow, he.
By the way, are these substantially different from a structural standpoint, or this is just constantly changing names, like that weird time when they tried to rename the ISS to Alpha?
Oh no, yeah, there's been. Oh, you mean Space Station Freedom?
Oh, did they call it? Was it also Freedom
yeah.
at some point?
Yeah, so it started as like Freedom, and then it became an international effort. Not all of our international partners are into Freedom, so it's changed. So, well, the ITS was the biggest one. That was the big monster, going to be the big monster. Like that was his like colonial transport thing, right? And then it went from there to you had this was going to be the BFR. This model,
right?
Just now just garbage. It's just a paperweight. And then he switched it again with one of the 3 fins, and that became basically. He says, no, that's actually going to be we'll call it Starship, not Spaceship, but Starship. I had that wrong. But anyhow, the news over the weekend was he was talking about construction. Now they'd said they were going to be building this out of advanced composite materials. And on Twitter, somebody was responding to a question about, saying that, that Elon was like, oh, yeah, it's going to be made of composites. And Elon's like, it's going to be made of metal. It's going to be made of metal. The new design is metal.
Yeah. Didn't he, in some elaboration, I saw a headline that said a fairly heavy metal to boot.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe it's going to be really cool. Really, really cool. So we don't know what this means. He's switched this over, which, let me tell you what, on the SpaceX Reddit forums, it's like panic. It's like finding out if you're a Game of Thrones fan that there may be a change or a delay in the next book.
Can I speculate?
Brian, there's no room for speculation in this show.
I would imagine that part of the reason you do a composite, carbon fiber thing is because you want to save weight. But I can also imagine that there's a trade-off of durability. And to my untrained spectator third party in the stand eyes, I took this to be a vote of confidence in the strength of, ironically, given they just landed, I'm using air quotes, landed a booster in the sea, I think it's a vote of confidence in their ability to re-land and reuse it, where some egghead somewhere I could totally picture say, hey, if we do this carbon fiber thing, you're going to get 300 uses before it starts to fracture and break apart. But If you make it out of, let's say, I don't know, a thicanium, then you get 1,000 uses out of it. It just depends on how confident you are that you're always going to be able to to land it over and over and over again.
That might well be the case. It's one of the problems with using composites for this is we don't have a lot of experience in building complete composite spacecraft. And right now, SpaceX is building stuff mainly out of aluminum, mainly out of metal. They'll use like composites for the tanks and other parts of it. And they use a lot of composite materials, but mainly it's, these things are made of metal, and they're really good at doing friction stir welding or these other techniques. And it might have been, if they were looking at their timeline going, yes, we want to do the composites, but in their test, what they were building, they may have just encountered challenges, because part of it, composites are great. The challenge with composites is often when you want to attach things to them. If I have a composite tank and I want to mount stuff to it, I want to have another section or whatever, it's not like metal where you just sort of weld something and you look at it with your scopes and you see where the fractures are. Little drilling holes and doing things in the composites can substantially change the structure and the strength of it. So I don't think they're abandoning composites at all, but I think what they're going to do is like, hey, we can build this using our existing techniques. Now we're going to probably have maybe 20% less payload capacity. We're going to take a hit there, but we'll know aerodynamically and structurally how this thing works, etc. So I think that's probably the direction. So yeah, you're right.
So what is the panic on the subreddit?
Well, let me read to you like some of the.
Of course, number one, the worldwide standard for calm, reasoned debate, Reddit.com. Always, and look, not every subreddit is every subreddit. There are some that are very measured, and there are some that are very silly, and there are some that focus only on news, and there's some that focus only on the memes. I will say I do subscribe to the SpaceX subreddit. I tend to find it a spirited but fairly scholarly, by Reddit standards, dissection of something that everybody who's there finds pretty fascinating. So I'm curious when you say panic, what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, a way to think about this, like the cool thing about like the SpaceX Reddit, on one hand is you'll get people like actual aerospace engineers or people who just know a lot. And then on the other hand, you'll get somebody like, I drew this picture in my adult education program of why Elon Musk, should put rockets on the Tesla and use that for a craft. Pardon the peanut butter stains. So you get that's me. That's pretty much me. That's my comments. But anyhow, so you have a headline discussion: concern over Starship's dwindling payload capacity. You have does prediction, the first working BFR will be small, like 50 tons capacity small. And so a lot of this sort of concern, and if you read the actual forums themselves, you get into them, you'll see there's a lot of like, oh no, it's changed. It keeps changing. It keeps getting smaller and smaller,
And so that's the panic there is that because it is now heavier, which takes more fuel to launch into space, that part of that trade-off will be in payload size and capacity, basically.
Yeah, that's the fear, because if you're using a heavier material and you're not changing the size of the overall craft, then yeah, there's a penalty to be paid from somewhere, which generally means capacity. So
you would probably be the our authority on this. So are you panicked?
No, it's. If I ever go in there and I talk in the forums, I try to answer, like, sometimes, beginners have technical questions and stuff, it'll ask stuff in there. And I'm the guy that tries to patiently explain stuff because people patiently explain things to me. One of the things that what we want is a reusable spacecraft. We want a reusable spacecraft. That is the goal, a fully reusable spacecraft, one that functions like an airplane that you just send up, it comes back down.
Yeah.
That's the biggest goal we need. Getting there is the important part. Whether or not it's made out of composites, whether or not it's the size of, a 50-story building or it's a 20-story building. Once you get reusability, your cost per launch is stupid cheap. Having bigger cargo capacity is great, but No, I'm not. And also, if they're using the techniques like they're talking about doing, like metal construction, things like this, like so much of what they do with the Falcon 9 lines can be used now to go build that. It's that's why I'm like, yeah. Remember, we've for our listeners there, we've the three of us, we've all our Bryce, you're there too, right?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Oh
gosh,
a weird flex. I'm not upset about it at
all. Brian, Justin, and I, we've been to the factory, and it's impressive. And you see the methods by which some of the methods which they build these things. And that can carry forward to what they're doing now. If they're doing composites, it would be trying to, the carbon fiber wraps, which they do for parts of the stuff. And, one of our friends worked there on, would be like a large part of it, a much, much bigger part of it. But here, a lot of it can be metalworking techniques they're familiar with. So that excites me because, hey, once you get that down, then you can say, yeah, now we're going to, you know what, we think we can, 5 years down the road, 2 years down the road, we think we can build a shell out of composite. We'll go do that. We already know the engines work. We already know the flight systems work. We already know the thing that controls the canards or whatever they are work. Then it's good. Better this now than some magical unicorn that may not exist later.
Did you watch the 60 Minutes interview?
Watch part of it. I didn't get into the rest of it. Did you?
I've only seen the clips that have made news, but was there anything interesting? I mean, the big headline that came out of it was him talking about the SEC settlement that he has, about his tweets, and with probably the biggest headline there being him saying that he does not respect the SEC. He respects the justice system, and that's why he will continue to do basically whatever he wants, short of having any kind of justice system penalty.
Yeah, it came across like your mom's scolding friend talking to you at the dinner table about all the things you've done wrong, and you're like, how long until she leaves? And I've met Leslie Stahl years ago. Actually, I appeared on a 60 Minutes segment a billion years ago, and doing a levitation with her. No, not levitate her, but anyhow, nice woman. But like, man, I mean, you just watch this interview, and it's kind of like, it feels just like scolding Elon.
Yeah.
Which,
I mean, it seems like where part of the populace is. There is a great frustration with a certain segment of our population and Elon Musk. So I think she gave voice to that. But I was just curious whether or not there was any other like news broken beyond the like Elon Musk, doesn't respect the SEC, which seems fairly clear.
And yeah, let me be clear. Like, there are a lot of questions that we want to hear, or people, critics, we want to. If you're a public figure, reporter's job to ask, no matter how uncomfortable, as a fan, like, I'm like, no, like, talk about his tweeting, talk about these things. If he's going to go do the interview, then by all means. But yeah, the problem is, like, he did an Axios interview like 2 weeks ago when what they teased sounded way more interesting. You watch this and you're like, these people don't know how to interview him. They really don't know how to interview him. So.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing is he seems like he does a lot of interviews for somebody in, even if you were just going to look at him as the CEO of a company that deals with the government a lot in general, like, you don't see a ton of headlines about like the CEO of Boeing or Northrop Grumman or anything, these people that work with the government contracts, because in general, the more you talk, the more you might have the ability to sour relationships that basically run the entire business, right? And then SpaceX is something that does depend heavily on, NASA right now is the biggest buyer of what they are selling. They hope that it continues to grow and expand, but Elon Musk is somebody that has felt fairly comfortable sticking his face into the buzzsaw of, like, puffing a J on the Joe Rogan podcast and drinking whiskey throughout the previous 2 hours. So he's someone that talks a lot, but I do agree with you. I think beyond some of the surface level, like, wow, you said a thing on Twitter, or like, you want to go to Mars, there's not really a ton of like interesting questions when he seems fairly willing to just talk fancifully about where he wants to be in 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, the best ones tend to be the Reddit interviews, like when he'll do the Ask Me Anythings, and the group, the moderators there get the best questions. That's been the most revealing. And I should mention too, like last week they had 2 launches. They had one launch on Monday, which was amazing. You know, they sent up that satellite filled with like 54 different smaller satellites and payloads and stuff.
This is the one that was going up for the 3rd time, right?
Yep. And then on Tuesday, they had another launch. They sent a Dragon capsule to the space station, and we got a really good test of what happens when you only have one hydraulic line for your fins that help you land. And you could see the video of the craft coming back down over Cape Canaveral. And the way the boosters land is they aim for the ocean, and then at the last moment, if the control systems work, they divert and land on the pad. Well, in this case, the control systems were not working, in that it was the fins, the adjustable fins, the thing was wobbling, and it basically finally it corrected itself and slowed down right before it touched down in the ocean.
Did a human make this call, or did the robot basically it came to the decision gate? It's like, sorry, this is not returning the numbers I like to see. We're just gonna do our best to gently land it in the ocean.
Robots.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's amazing. Yep. That's astonishing.
Yep. And it did a very soft landing in the water, so they're towing it back to port. And Elon was saying, "No, we're going to see if we could, wash it off and use it again. We'll see. And that's, the hard part is the corrosion that you get from there, but it's not a little bit of a saltwater bath. Probably not. I don't know if they'll ever use this one again. But I'm sure
I would imagine the primary reason that we don't reuse stuff that lands in the ocean is because it doesn't tend to land quite as gently as this does.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. But it's just any time one of the problems they had with the Falcon 1 testing out on that atoll was just
holy
corrosion.
crap.
Yeah.
Oh, you're
that
just
was a gentle landing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then, this part probably not so gentle. A building falling on its side, slapping into the water, probably not the best. But I'll tell you what, man, valuable data. You pull it out, you find out all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and it wasn't like for SpaceX. It wasn't like, oh my God, it's like. One, they've joked about we're going to have a backlog of boosters. It is the first, this is the Block 5, which was like, oh my God, the Block 5. But they had like one hydraulic line, so there wasn't redundancy. And so if they were in a position like, we know we have to recover this, they probably would have spent the extra $500,000 or whatever to ensure that. And that's the difference between like NASA and space, private space, like the spy satellite payloads and things like this, or secret spy satellite payloads. So part of why you pay more is because they're going over every single little detail several times, and then they might go in and we're going to build it with extra redundancy, guys. Not just redundancy, some extra redundancy.
I thought that's what the X in SpaceX stands for.
Yep. So anyhow, and there was a Delta IV launch like yesterday or 2 days ago, which was supposed to take some super secretive payload. And literally, they stopped, they were like ignition, and they stopped the launch because of some anomaly. So
the Delta IV is another SpaceX rocket that is not
recoverable?
No,
Delta IV is a competing rocket. Delta IV was like over, it's one of the bigger rockets, one of the bigger heavier lift rockets, and so last second abort for the Delta IV Heavy. So that's the up until the Falcon Heavy, like the Delta IV was like one of the largest there was for carrying capacity. And so they had this literally what was the countdown? At the T minus 7.5 second mark.
Cool boy.
Yeah. They were about to hit launch and then they hear, hold. They'd already, flames from the hydrogen igniters had already started. They're already getting ready to and they stopped.
Wild. So. And that's a human call in that case.
It might, yeah. I mean, it's probably a computer or something. I don't know. There's a point at which computers sort of do it. So I don't know.
Oh, hey, I got one. Did you guys see the thing about the sounds from Mars? We talked about the latest probe that landed on Mars with the seismograph. They
heard about it.
They have not yet set the seismograph or whatever the seismometer is on the surface. So the idea is, you set the thing on the surface of Mars, and it listens very, very precisely. But it's so precise that while it's still on the probe, it's able to measure vibrations of, get this, the wind blowing over the charging panels. So it's very, very difficult to hear it. Like, you can listen to it real time. You could pretty much only hear it with subwoofers and earphones on. But if you pitch shift it or speed it up 100 times or whatever, it starts to sound more and more like wind, which makes sense. Now, keep in mind, this is not a microphone. This is a seismograph recording vibrations. But again, to a certain degree, that's what a microphone does. There is supposed to be in, I think, 2020, a probe that is going to land with 2 microphones on it. So we'll actually hear the surface of Mars. But in the meantime, you can hear a pretty good approximation. Here we go. I think we're listening to it now. I believe this is the real-time one, right? Or is this the sped-up one?
Oh, my God. It died. Something's on Mars.
I believe that was.
I'll tell you what. I would. That's like something that you could go to sleep to. That's like amazing.
I believe that was a Carl Sagan idea 20 or 30 years ago. He was pushing for, because he was so very aware that the poetry, there needed to be a human interest element, to keep, those tax revenues going to space exploration. I think he had suggested this, decades ago. And it's good to, if not hear exactly a microphone, then a close approximation of what sounds there.
Oh, that's going to be the next like Silicon Valley CEO trend is like, along with your 13 tweet thread about how you meditated for a month, like Jack posted on Twitter yesterday. It'll be, I only now sleep to Martian wind. That's the only way that I can stir my very important brain.
Yeah, I only go to meditation retreats in places with extremely bad human rights records too.
I know, jeez. I swear, man.
Yeah, their record is so bad, they make you go to meditation retreats. That's how bad they are.
Jack Dorsey, man, I swear, like sometimes it's like, I wouldn't blame him. I wonder if he has burner accounts. It's like some of that stuff you should just probably keep to yourself.
Yeah.
And on one level, it's like, look, it's so if you don't know what we're talking about, Jack Dorsey did a big old tweet thread about how his birthday, he did a 10-day silent meditation. And he explained very specifically about the meditation style that he did and what it was aiming to do. But he also did it in Myanmar, which,
Mm-hmm. Also, looks like he's bumping up against the limitations of the Twitter platform. Maybe that would have been a better Medium post or
he
Facebook.
Had like 12 posts about this, is what Brian's pointing out to our audio listeners.
Yeah.
Hey, Jack, man, I gotta run out of space here.
Did you see this gross? He posted this one photo of his leg because he intentionally got bit by mosquitoes like 100 times.
Yeah, dude, he intended for that to be posted on reddit.com/r/D's knees.
Well, I'll tell you what. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we have a retreat of our own, a retreat from, I don't know, the grind of reality, and that is
patreon.com/weird things, another site that's totally uncontroversial. But head on over there right now. Go ahead and kick us a few dollars. Make sure that this show continues to run, and we have some fun ideas for the coming year and continuing to grow this Weird Things empire. If you like science, if you like the odd, the strange, the unexplainable, well, folks, why don't you go ahead and kick a few cents over to the crew that doesn't think Bigfoot is real? They think he's awesome. Patreon.com/weird things.
Listen, it is interesting to see where we are in time. What things, we are in what we as kids would consider the future.
Well, yes. Even yesterday, I would have thought of today as the future.
Well, Brian, I mean, when you watch Blade Runner and it's a 2019 flying cars and robot people and all this, which even then we knew was a little bit exaggerated, but hey, that's 2019 is just a few weeks away.
Yeah,
really, that's personal transit has been revolutionized, right? For whatever the flying thing that still may be a little ways off, but there's no doubt we have lived long enough that our childhoods look more like the 50s than the 50s looked when we were kids, right? The idea of a pre-mass telecommunication age, even when we were like, oh yeah, no, we long distance calling and the dawning of like pagers and stuff like that were already a thing. Global television was already a thing, and now it's like, oh geez, all those conventions are like dying, and they when AT&T needs to start buying blogs so they can pivot into selling advertising, like that's an amazing place that we've come to.
And we can look at what we don't have, but then we forget that if you read a lot of science fiction, when they talk about like when you look at Star Trek and stuff, where do they think computers were going to be or whatnot? But or reading Heinlein or Asimov, our phones, the one little device that everybody has now is way more advanced than I think we really thought we would have had at this point, and the capabilities of it are immense. That everybody has this device in their hand, or just about everybody has this device within their person that can turn them into a TV broadcaster in seconds. That if everybody likes what you're saying, you can be heard around. And there are a lot of just amazing, incredible things and the repercussions of that. So we can go like, we didn't get this, but look at what we did get. Now, go ahead.
Just one real quick thing, and this will be kind of a pre-pick. There was a great, now I'm going to forget where it was, but I think it was the New York Times explanation of the modern music industry and the idea, the rise of the SoundCloud rap genre, and specifically just like it is the membrane between you and your friends goofing off, making a song. Like there are right now A&R representatives trolling through. I think it was the way that this story painted it. SoundCloud songs that were just tagged sad. Sad is the new dominant genre, and a lot of these kids are actually from where me and Andrew grew up in South Florida. But they post it on SoundCloud one night. Maybe it's in it gets popular. It's in a Kylie Jenner, in the background of a Kylie Jenner Instagram story, and next thing you know, you're on Saturday Night Live. Like it is just an immediate pipeline in a totally shifting a shifting place. Let me try to find it, but it just shows you like now everything, entertainment has been disrupted on a level that I don't think even post Napster we could have assumed. Like we assumed that like Napster was going to be something file trading and streaming services were going to like maybe put people in check, but now it's like, oh, this is it right here. It was on Vulture. The gatekeepers of SoundCloud rap it was a very fascinating read.
Oh, check that out. As far as what kind of things that sort of foretold the future, a movie that I thought was extremely influential as far as other science fiction and particularly influenced Star Trek considerably was Forbidden Planet. Remember he had the little handheld device that could scan and see that he would go around and he's checking out like the girl and stuff. Go back and watch Forbidden Planet. That'll be my pick. Will be that. That movie's amazing.
Preemptively, actually, Forbidden Planet is, I think, even more fun. The first time I watched the entire thing through, they were celebrating, I think, the 50th anniversary or some anniversary of it on Sci-Fi, so they got a bunch of luminaries from science fiction, and I remember being halfway through watching it and not realizing until I heard LeVar Burton do a little soundbite in which he says, you realize it's The Tempest. It's Shakespeare's The Tempest.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy crap, it is! And it was a lot more fun once I realized that.
I did. Yeah, it's, Tempest, not as cool. But the reason I brought this up was Wired Magazine has an article which it points out something kind of funny, but it's typical kind of Wired these days conclusions, which whatever. 50 years ago this week, it was 50 years ago yesterday, Doug Engelbart did a demo. He did a demo, and Brian's eyes just lit up here. he did what's called the mother of all demos. And what this was, it was a technology demo of what he and his cohorts were working on, and it was called the online ON capital N line system. And basically he was saying like, hey, this is how we think we're going to be collaborating. This is in the future. This is this technology. Understand, 50 years ago. And he showed the precursor to the mouse. He showed a graphical user interface. They were things that were going on one screen were also occurring, in another, between San Francisco and Menlo Park. So like 20 miles away or something like this. So they were doing like collaborative style working on documents and hypertext. All of the things that we would, now recognize today as sort of like a big part. Now he also had like, there was like, to be fair, he had the mouse on the right, and on the left he had like a chording keyboard, which, I haven't quite adopted that, but it's an amazing thing to watch this demo in 1968 to see, something we didn't see as a commercial product until really, 12 or 14 years later, if you want to consider the Lisa or the Mac, skipping over the Xerox PARC station, which never really made it to market in a real capacity. It's incredible. It's this kludgy, presentation.
I believe I first heard about this. I want to say it was either 99% Invisible or maybe a Radiolab, maybe even Freakonomics. I'm not sure which podcast, but they did one where they talked through it. I'm leaning towards 99PI. But they played clips from it, and they talked about the revolutionary aspects that got involved that didn't end up showing up in common computers for years and years. It's fantastic. It's really prescient. I can't believe it's 50 years ago that this stuff was so perfectly envisioned.
Yeah, and a big part of what it wasn't just about, hey, these are the peripherals we're going to use. It's this idea of how we could interact and work together. And, people in different locations collaborating on a document. And part of what the working group was going to do was like, we want to sort of evolve and find better, more efficient, faster ways in which groups can collaborate. What's significant about this is like, normally like, hey, I'm going to write a report on my typewriter, print it up, have my secretary correct it, proof it, whatever. Then I'm going to run it down the hall, put it in a tube or whatever, and it's going to show up at Justin's desk. Justin's going to read this thing. He's going to make his notes and his corrections, and then I'm going to get it back. And then a week later, if we're really efficient, we're going to have, a report done. This is like what we do now, hey, hop online. Let's talk about this. I got a document open. Let's go correct and get this thing done. And now we have to do more documents and do more stuff. But, it was prescient. And you look at the way things that, I was trying to explain Slack to somebody the other day, and it's like, well, it's like IRC. It's like, it's like if text messaging and email are very different, it's why Slack is this platform unto itself. There's a reason why it has Microsoft and Salesforce concerned, because, better, easier ways for people to collaborate, is ideal. So anyhow, Doug Engelbart, the really worth checking out, mother of all demos, which, the first time you see this thing, it's kind of, you're like, wow, like we thought about this all the way back then, and took a while, but now, a lot of it.
I guess the fun part about that is, we had a lot of thoughts 50 years ago. Some of them panned out, some of them did not. But now it makes me wonder, how many thoughts are we having now that sound extraordinary and insane? Like right now it's easy to say nanobots and micromaterials and all that stuff. But so many other things that right now we're not even giving, genetic engineering, storage and DNA and all that stuff. I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see what 50 years from now looks like.
I'll tell you, I would actually love to hear from the listeners. Like what is the, what is the far-flung idea? Like that you have an ability to reap a tremendous amount of money by betting $1 on one totally far-flung, like not in use idea, and you could buy that stock for $1 right now. What would you do?
It's a great question. Often the most innovative things are the things that are kind of around us that look pretty much like the other things, but are just slightly different, and we don't appreciate. that until later.
Man, this is purely from a selfish perspective, but if I was going to buy a $1 future technology lottery ticket, I'm going to say the whole concept of us full on curing the disease of aging. It sounded so crazy 20 years ago, but just the progress in the last 20 years, I kind of want to dive in on the Kurzweil train here and say, like, well, there's no reason that you can't, I don't know. The more we learn about the way that even DNA changes after you're born, and the fact that as a living organism, we find out that, what is it? I want to say 30% of your entire body mass is, gut bacteria, and you're this weird collective hive of many, many different single cell organisms. It doesn't sound like the craziest thing on the planet to reset the watch and to actually grow younger.
I think, I think that we're gonna see rapid advancement. I mean, and the problem is, it's always the people who understand it are often the ones that make overly ambitious predictions about it, because you kind of the mistake you make is that everybody else understands what you see. And then it takes a while, like we had Doug Engelbart, in 1968 showing, hey, this is how computers would work. And then, you had the Xerox PARC lab was working on this collaborative form of computing. They had the first kind of, intercomputer networks. And I mean, as far as, there were networking protocols before then, but they were doing advanced networking protocols, even like kind of laser printers, all sorts of cool tech. But their ability to bring it to market was like many academic environments, like, hey, we could build a thing. And it's like, you can build an amazing prototype electric car. To mass produce that is an entirely different technical challenge. And it's the same with these demos and stuff. We can spend $500,000 and build an amazing tech demo. Figuring out how to put it in your pocket, that's a hard problem. And what happens is that we often look at, we who are into this stuff go, yeah, well, everybody else will get it. And it takes a long time. It was like Steve Jobs going to Xerox PARC, seeing the graphical user interface, which is influenced by this, going, oh my God, this is the future. And a guy like Steve Jobs was able to say, like, well, let's make this happen. And as far as other stuff, like use of computers in like recognizing, solving problems in AI, I talk to people in certain fields, and I'll mention things like this, like, yeah, no, we're not into that yet. I don't have anybody in my lab who knows how to do this or whatever. And you're like, this would probably make you 1,000 times faster, but the knowledge gap, not enough people out there who know this are finding their way into other fields that can make this go faster. But when they do, it's great.
What about you, Justin? What's your dollar bet if you wanted to go for a long shot?
I mean, you kind of took mine just because I've had a stated point on this show that I don't believe I'll die, and I think anybody conceding the idea that death is going to happen is stupid. Like, because if it's going to happen, why give it the satisfaction of you like pre-authorizing it? Man, if there is one thing, you want to know what? I'll go with a like mind to mind, like what we would think of now as like telepathy.
Ooh,
some
that's
way
a good one.
Of being able to hear what we would now consider to be thoughts, without having to verbalize, right? Just some kind of brain, like some neural thing that will then get transferred over the internet, and now I can, instead of saying into the phone like a baby, hey, remind Brian about meeting to talk about the Night Attack show, I could just think it and it would just pop into Brian's head.
It's pretty good.
What's funny about that, I was thinking about the other day how we have these devices that allow us to share all of our thoughts with everybody immediately, and it just does nothing but get us in trouble, it feels like at times. And how telepathy, we talk about how cool telepathy would be until we kind of had this form of it that we're now like, oh no, this is because like if we're telling young athletes that, like, listen, you got to apologize for what you said at 14 because it's out there in the ether. Justin, you had a thought you shared.
Yeah.
10 years ago.
No, totally. I mean, I certainly think that there would have to be certain restrictions on it, but I do think that part of what we're going through now is a very, very, very awkward adolescence of like, We all ran in. We all filled this space with our thoughts and our jokes, and we tried to make each other laugh. And maybe people couldn't read the room, and they were mean, and they were awful, or they said things that were the worst things that you could possibly say. And then they stayed there forever and ever and ever. And now culture turns, and this is where the adolescence comes in, because you have the youthful kind of expression of empty space, fill it, all these sensations are new, nothing bad can ever happen to me. And then next thing you know, we now have to process, like, okay, well, what does it mean? Real, like, just even looking at it not in a gotcha kind of way, like, what does it mean that the guy who won the Heisman Trophy kept calling his friend queers? Like, where should we put it on the grand list of offenses and penance that should be paid? How should we process that Kevin Hart had these, comments about, not wanting his kids to be gay? And also, isn't it kind of weird that all these things are gay related? Maybe we have a societal question that we need to ask ourselves, that, why was everything at that point a one massive gay joke? Like there's a lot of good questions that we have to ask, and yet we are also need to live in the moment, and we need to decide whether or not, what do we do now that we all have a permanent record and we filled it ourselves, and we took the conscious effort to press a button to make sure that it was recorded, even if we didn't think it was a permanent record, in the same way that we probably didn't think of our permanent record when we were in school.
Yeah. I think certainly I think that as we mature, that we'll realize, like, hey, yeah, that joke that I make with my friends, that maybe I shouldn't have made in the first place, I really shouldn't make with it where everybody's watching me and my friends have a conversation.
Yeah.
If it doesn't represent who I am, if it's not really the me, because, that's the problem. It's a complex issue. I have no answers. Let's be nice to everybody.
But I do think that, look, these are the questions that we have to wrestle with. Like, these are the things that we need to, that are going to define our age. The decisions that we make culturally about these kinds of questions really will steer the future of how we deal with it, because we're kind of the first generation to think about this, because we didn't have the tools before.
Yeah. I don't think that's something we really thought way ahead of the time, was that so much of what would affect us was not what was observed of us in private or secretly, was just the things, how much of us, the digital, how much of it's out there, how much of it's, that we freely share. And maybe it would have been obvious to somebody good looking at, like, well, there's a lot of economic value in sharing, so we'll incentivize systems to do that. And the more robust the conversations and things you say, the better for the system, but maybe not so much for you if you realize you said something stupid.
What about you? If you're going to buy a penny stock in a long shot for future technology?
Let me try to think of what would be I was at a conference a few weeks ago, and somebody who I really respect, I think is a really good thinker, had made a very kind of dismissive comment about, like, he was like, oh, uploading, people, if you're uploading, you're still dead. And I'm not like, it's a person I'm friends with, but I'm like, I'm not going to get into this conversation to try to explain the difference between, like, side loading and uploading and that, because I don't think they cared to have the distinction. They just like to have their flippant sort of response to this sort of thing. And that's what I'm doing now, is, like, I kind of pull myself away from engagements where I'm like, they don't care. They have their mind is made up. I'm just going to look like some sort of crackpot by going, like, well, here's the thing, But I think that side loading is a very interesting idea. And that is, once you have these brain interfaces, like the neural lace that goes on the back of your head that gives you access to data, you start to, and we don't know, like, can I start to put a part of my consciousness on a separate system? So part of me is engaged in talking while other part of me is learning something, or can I put the part of me that feels like the imaginary center of myself over there? And at some point, if I don't want to be, you make a copy of me on a computer server, yes, that copy will feel like it's exactly me, but the center of my consciousness won't be there. And maybe it's every time we go to sleep or every 15 seconds anyways, our center of our consciousness gets wiped and we just don't realize it. That's another thing to think about. But I think sideloading is a very interesting idea. The idea that we can start building parts of our brain outside of our body.
Bryce, you got a hot take on this?
Ooh, a future tech.
Future tech, that's a long shot. Like if you want, here while you're thinking, I will say there was last night. I find myself, and I can tell I live in the future because I get enraged by what is a fairly innocuous, what we used to consider not a problem at all, but like on our way back from wherever we were last night, the light turned red and we stopped and nobody crossed, and there was some people stopped across from us, and then we started going again, and I thought, this is a crime. This is happening all over the country. People are stopping for no good reason. Like, how fast are we going to have smart lights that just manage traffic effectively, like red blood cells everywhere? This is
like
insane.
running a late night red light.
Yeah, or just not even making it red because, like, what's the point? Why did we have to stop, stare at each other for 30 seconds, and then go past each other? That served no purpose.
You know what I think this is? maybe this is too out there. I feel like nano machine technology will be a thing. I feel like that'll be some sort of supplement to our physiology.
Like artificial red blood cells and
or even like controlling like hormones and chemicals and like I think a lot about Metal Gear Solid and how much of that game is like, oh, whatever, that's not magic, it's nanomachines.
Right.
But also like, hey, they tried to explain a lot of that stuff. They tried to make it something within the realm of humanity. So I don't know. I feel like if you told me that there was a nanomachine that would give you perfect aim, or if there was a nanomachine that would, like, I don't know, change parts of you or like heighten or refine, I don't know. I feel like that is a long shot, but also
I think that's actually a great general rule for this. If you wouldn't get laughed at by somebody for saying what you're going to say, then you're not
thinking hard enough.
That's not in this. You can't get that for $1. Like somebody said, like, oh, is it a cop out to say AR and VR? Yes, there are businesses that are currently right now based on that. That's going for way more than $1. You need to say it and have somebody be like, that's what gets you $1 stock on a future tech.
Yep, that's a good dividing line.
Yeah. So.
I had a thought the other day. I was watching like an ant crawl all around the ground, and I'm thinking like, man, like, before we're able to make like people, we're going to want to build like little smart ants or things like that. Because you can do a lot of cool stuff. You have some smart ants in your house. You're like, hey, make sure there are no other bugs, clean things out, look for leaky pipes, go on the walls, do this. Like smart ants would be great. And if we're in a world where we're talking about, uploading our consciousness and all this and nanomachines, and yeah, building smart ants are cool. But I'm like, man, like, yeah, but what happens if like you could use smart ants to build smart ants? And this is not a new thought, but I was thinking like, yeah, and then like, what if we have a problem of invasive smart ants? They're everywhere. And
that's bad. Or like, we always hear about, oh, like the bees are dying and whole ecosystems are collapsing because of the lack of bees. What if we just had little nano bees that just did all the things that bees normally do, like, and they were able to self-replicate, and we could just totally artificially contribute to not only society, but also just these ecosystems if we wanted them.
Kind of not too far off from that. I think we talked about this story last year, but there was that Dutch startup that wanted to train crows to pick up cigarette butts. And it's like, once you train them, how quickly do you start selecting for the crows who are the best at picking up cigarette butts? And all of a sudden you just have, it's like better that than them, bugging me during my food. Like, let's just replace the general population with cleanup crows.
Well, I was thinking like if these like smart ants became a problem, like, somebody we couldn't stop them, the idea.
Oh, got you. Oh yeah. So if they go wild, oh my God, is that like the new version of the birds?
The ants.
I mean, it's one of the things that's been suggested going back to nanotech, conversations and fears is the idea of you build the little, the out of control machines that, kind of do whatever they want. And, the answer is like, well, if you can build a smart ant, then you build the smart wasp, and you get into a war of these things, which,
then the smart parasite, the smart fungus.
Yeah. Hey guys, you know what I'd like to do?
What?
I want to send the three of you, Bryce too.
Okay.
I want to send you guys. You look like you've been working kind of hard, and I want to send you on a vacation.
Oh, thank goodness.
Oh, great! I love vacation, man. The greatest thing about it is that you're not working.
Right.
You can just put your mind at ease.
I've decided that you guys should have a little trip, maybe relax a little bit.
Dunzo.
Great.
Fun.
All right, let me grab my paperback
Sign
book.
me up.
Let me set fire to
Go
it.
somewhere
Replace it
warm.
with a PDA. Got it.
Yep, there we go. Yeah, I'm gonna grab my old dog-eared copy of Daniel Steele novel, and I'm gonna rest and relaxation.
Yo, man, I
recharging
got
the old batteries.
I got
All
travel
right.
Yahtzee. We're good.
Oh, nice.
Oh man, this is gonna be great.
I figured that you guys maybe want to. I mean, I've been with you guys in public, and I've seen people come up and recognize you and go like, "Hey, you're Brian Brushwood.
Yeah.
Hey, you're Jason Robert Young."
That's actually a true thing. Last week, I was getting copies at a FedEx Kinko's, and somebody started honking at me like a goose. Real thing. And I had to. It shocked me personally. And then I realized that it was a running joke on mine and Ashley's stream that there's like a goose thing, and that she calls me a goose, and he'd like looking me dead in the eyes and going, Hank, Hank, Hank. And I'm like, I've never been so terrified and then simultaneously delighted in my life.
That's amazing.
That's a very heavy commitment to do to someone to their face.
But the good news is that he turned around the Night Attack button pack tops very fast, literally within the day. So big shout out.
Well, and I think that, you guys, we love all of the team that's part of Weird Things, everybody out there listening right now and all that. But sometimes, you want to go into a little isolation, and maybe you don't want to go to Myanmar, and maybe you just want to. So I've got the perfect location for you guys.
Oh, fantastic.
Nice.
Sign us up.
Little
good.
island off the coast of Africa.
Okay. Nice.
You're not going to be bothered by any people at all.
This is going to be fantastic. You know what? This is one thing that I know about Brian and Bryce and myself is the one thing that would ruin a vacation is people validating our career and art. So we just need to get as far away as possible. That would immediately ruin it. A tiny, tiny little island off the coast of Africa. Just what the doctor ordered.
That's right. Is this like a sandals? Is this
Well,
Yeah.
it would be an empty sandals, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be
Private
nobody
sandals.
there. We're going to have to.
I mean, hopefully they still have like a drink package though. Are we just we're paying for that?
you know
up
what?
front? Is
In
it
my
one of them all-you-can
imagination,
drinks?
gentlemen, we're gonna helicopter in. We're gonna land, and everything will be catered. There'll be refrigerators strategically
Nice.
dropped all over the place. You just pop it open.
Well, we're gonna boat you in. It's kind of an eco-friendly. We're gonna boat you in on there.
Yeah,
but yes, there will be beachside dining. There will be
That's
food.
fantastic.
We'll serve you
Hey,
food on
also,
the beach.
Let me just type an email out real quick to our tour director. I know we're by ourselves, but periodically, maybe 5 to 6 times a day, can there be somebody that knows who we are that you just boat in just to recognize us real quick, and then they can go and leave?
You know what? I just saw what you were typing. Let me say, failing that, can you just distribute a bunch of like random tapes, like it's a BioShock game, and we could hit play, and it's validating, talking about what fans they are of our work.
Or maybe every couple
Sure.
hours, a team, like, creates some videos and posts them to Twitter to let us know, like, hey, I don't know what you guys are doing, but you guys are awesome.
You know what? It occurs to me, off the coast of Africa, there's probably birds on the island. What say we train all the birds to just say, "You're great. Patreon's
Yeah.
awesome. You have money."
You guys will definitely be the center of attention. Don't worry.
Oh,
You'll
great.
Definitely be the center of attention.
All right. You want to know what? I think things are looking up. Beachside dining, center of attention. Oh, man. I speak with total confidence that nothing can go wrong.
Let
You
me
know
just
what?
let my guard down for even a moment.
It could be paradise. It could be paradise.
I think it is.
Yeah, hold on. There might be a trick up his sleeve. Ha! I bet you didn't think I brought this deep woods off with me, and yet here it is. Way ahead of you, Andrew. There's no catch this time.
Yeah, hey, you want some salt and pepper for that L you have to eat? Trying to get us bitten?
Busted!
Well, I'm gonna break.
Welcome to our new podcast, Relaxed Things. Just three cool
You
bros eating on the beach.
You ever seen the TV show The Prisoner?
Yes.
Okay, and this prisoner was sent around this like island resort where like these were where they sent former spies to, and we weren't quite sure who ran the island, and like, you could be working for British intelligence one day, then you'd wake up on the island the next day, and maybe people are trying to find out your secrets or whatever, but it was this kind of cool complex web. This island's not unlike that. There are going to be other people who are actually kind of retirees there. There are going to be some number of retirees there.
Okay. A nice quiet retirement community.
Yeah,
Look, hey,
they're trying to get
island's big enough for both of us.
So
I'm sure that these retirees are nice, kind-hearted, beautiful souls that we will be enriched by having long conversations. You want to know what?
You know what?
We need to pay more attention and deference to our elders.
Gentlemen,
well,
I'm just going to say, I'm going to guess that we're going to have the #1 podcast live on this island. We're going to entertain the masses telling crazy stories.
A brand new demographic.
That's right.
The live podcast.
Yeah. Just we say, remember it.
Yeah.
I think if you guys do a podcast, and I think you should actually do a live, like a Twitch stream from it, I think a lot of people are going to want to watch this.
Well, then,
I think that it is something that will be totally wholesome entertainment where many very exciting ideas, once relegated to the dustbin of history, can again be explored.
yeah. Hey, look, just sign our names on the dotted line, buddy. Just go ahead and forge those. Just count us
All right.
in.
Well, I'm sending Bryce the some information on this.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
Bryce, can show
Bryce,
you
handle all this. Just sign it all and just get us all set up.
Don't actually hand wave
Exactly.
at me.
In fact, you want to know what? I'm pressing publish on the press release that we're putting out. Brian, Justin, and Bryce, 3 awesome boys having a great time at this amazing African retreat with some of the most beautiful older people on the planet in mind and body.
So I just sent Bryce an email, and actually I attached the first person to welcome you, your first person to greet you and welcome you there. You want to show that image?
I'm just waiting for it to arrive.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
we're
I'm
pulling up in the boat, the rocky shores, and the mist starts to clear, and then the sun is
goodness.
shining over this island. Your tropical birds calling. It's just so serene.
And look at this
And-
little fella. Hey, look at this
And
little
he's
guy.
there to greet you. He's welcome ashore, gentlemen.
Oh,
that's so
dude, this
sweet.
guy's great. These looks like a chimpanzee of some variety.
Common chimp, yeah.
Yeah, they bite fingers, but I salute him from afar, and I doff my cap at him.
Now, as you get closer, there are other chimps there, and they greet you. You were worried about getting hungry. Don't worry, they're throwing you mangoes already.
Oh, right on.
That's great. I love mangoes. A fantastic choice of fruit.
Yeah, I
mean,
wash it
they're
off in the seawater.
Look at those little guys greeting us. Isn't that
The
nice?
mangoes may be pelting you in the face, but that's fine.
Ah.
They're chimps. They're not really good at throwing.
These are the retirees. What did they retire from? Where were they before?
Oh, medical testing lab. Some of them may have had contagious diseases and treated very horribly and have very nasty dispositions. But now they're on this island. So this is a story in The Sun, and it's about the real-life Planet of the Apes, this African island off the coast of Liberia, where they take chimpanzees.
The apes who are all infected with contagious diseases were abandoned.
Yeah.
Can you even do that?
I mean,
What
somebody
would
did
you
it.
do with them, Bryce?
Put them out
Put
of
them in
their
kindergarten?
Well, you don't put infected monkeys on what I assume is possibly a lifeline river for somebody.
Okay. I'm going to assume that all things being equal, they would rather be dumped on this island to live out their days than just
shot
euthanized.
In the head and thrown in a dumpster, right?
I mean, and plus we've had with humans there are leper colonies and in tuberculosis clubhouses. That's what they called them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the clubhouse.
Bryce
wants to murder them. Bryce
well,
just wants to.
I disagree. But now that we're here, how much do you think they enjoy podcasts?
Well, villagers say they will eat you.
Oh dear, they gobble them up.
So beachside dining, where the.
Oh, we're the.
No, like they bring food to the beach. Like the people who take care of the chimps do that.
Yeah.
Okay. But then they'll also eat us somewhere that's not the beach.
I mean, your fingers and face and your genitals are probably gonna get bitten.
Because they don't like to swim though, right? So as long as we just stand waist deep, we can perform our podcast for them the whole time.
Well, they don't, but you know what they say about nature and stuff, and apes have trouble swimming because of just their body mass, but they leap. I don't know how much I want to count on that.
All right, number one, I am very disappointed by this vacation destination, and I for one am calling an Uber.
Uber boat.
Man,
doesn't seem to be any reception here, guys. Can anybody make a hotspot? Who can make a hotspot?
I'm watching all of them perform and shouting out as if I'm watching Twitch. I give you 100 bits. That was very good opening of a coconut.
Yeah.
And Brian _ Brushwood subs.
Yeah. Like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit notifications.
Now, if you don't mind,
known
I'm
to
going
locals
swim.
is Monkey Island. Not connected with the Monkey Island that we discovered in LA.
Yeah.
It's another Monkey Island. But anyhow, the nice thing is that what is nice is that here you have chimps that are used for certain kinds of medical testing. It's hard to test, without doing it on humans. So we use chimps, and that's a long discussion about the ethics of that, what have you. But the upside is that instead of just putting these creatures down, they put them on an island and allow them to sort of live their remaining years in a habitat that's I'd hate better than the one they were in.
I'd hate to say it, but I guess I'm in favor of it over the alternative, right? I mean, if they, I mean.
I would assume there's probably some NIMBY concerns amongst the Liberian people. But yes, if we are talking about the indefinite island where we can allow diseased chimps to live out their days, or give them the old double tap solution, then I would probably my soul would rest easier that they got their own land.
You mean do the Bryce to them? Bryce them?
Okay, come on.
Noted chimpanzee murderer, Bryce Neshcom Castillo.
They were infected and left to die on an island.
No, they were left to live, Bryce.
Yes. Bryce, when you think about it,
with deadly diseases.
Aren't we all being left to die?
Oh, God.
These are the ones that survived, Bryce, but they still carry the diseases.
Man, I'm busy. I'm over there. I'm playing travel Yahtzee with this crew. I don't see what the big deal is. Yeah, I'm giving them nicknames. Here's Droopy
Scratchy.
Eye,
here's Bitey.
Open Sore. Here's Poxy.
Poxy's a cute
Face
name.
Spider.
That's actually a good one.
Here's Pluxy. Here's Old One Leg.
Here's bit my genitals off.
Hey man, you guys got picks?
Yeah, the picks.
What you got?
Yeah, so do I. But Andrew, you want to go ahead first?
My pick is, I'm going to mention it again, it's Forbidden Planet. Check that movie out. Forbidden Planet was way ahead of its time, extremely influential. There are things that we talk, Star Trek is influential, of course. But if you look at Forbidden Planet and then watch Star Trek, you're like, man, Gene Roddenberry watched some of this. And you watch the first episode, like I think The Cage, before when they redid it, you see a lot of like, man, these are kind of like If We Met the Krell and this and that, but really, it's a starship wandering, the galaxy, encountering, strange aliens and things like this. And there's actually a thing in The Cage where they're trying to use a laser to like take down this rock wall kind of thing, and they're getting power from the ship that's being beamed from the Enterprise there. And you're like, man, like there's a lot of like, oh, that's cool. We'll use that. So.
Awesome.
And then invent great new stuff. Not to knock Star Trek at all, but if you want to see one of the most influential things in science fiction, it's probably Forbidden Planet.
I have a pick. This will be pretty self-serving, but hey, why not? If anyone knows Brian Brushwood very well, he knows that he hosts a YouTube channel called Scam School. Oh wait, what's that? Oh, it's called Scam Nation now. Hey!
Oh,
wait
Scam
a minute.
Nation.
Well, what in Scam Nation?
What?
That's what we want everybody to say.
That was someone posted that on the Modern Rogue Reddit with a little cowboy hat on it. It was very good. So we're getting back in the groove of making more original content on the channel, and as a part of it, we did a little bit of a rebrand, and so there's already the first piece now. There'll be actually another thing tomorrow morning, hopefully. So. Check it out if you're not already following. It's got good advice. We did a couple of these mailbags videos already that we've filmed, and they're all really good, like advice, not just for magic necessarily, though it does have a magic bent, but just any sort of like life advice, work and career advice. That stuff's all in there, and it's good stuff. So check it out because we're going to be trying some new things over there.
Right on. Hey man,
I think that's great. Great. I'm very excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, it is really weird because we're at that phase of the transition because a big part of the rebranding is like, look, if you want to triple the content and you want to get suddenly highly diverse, there's two ways to do it. You can either keep calling it Scam School, in which case the whole world says, wait, why is Scam School getting so strange and weird? And
this is a different thing.
It doesn't look anything like Scam School.
Right.
Or you can acknowledge that Scam School is a piece of a much bigger landscape and make the channel a bigger thing and give you the freedom to experiment and grow into something bigger.
Yeah. So.
My pick is on Hulu, and it's Sorry to Bother You. Rewatched it again. So good. So good. I was able to get Bonnie to watch most of it, knowing what 30 minutes to skip over helped out tremendously. But it's wonderful. It's if you again can't say it enough that if you could go in not knowing a damn thing, then you are in for something you will not forget.
Yeah, I actually rewatched it a couple weeks ago because I watched the other big movie from Oakland. Oakland had a very, very big summer at the box office between the scenes in Black Panther with Ryan Coogler, who grew up in Oakland. Sorry to Bother You in this other movie, Blind Spotting. So I rewatched Sorry to Bother You again, and man, it'll still be one of my favorite movies of the year. It was one of my favorite times I had in a theater. On second watch, there were a few maybe little more crits than I would have had previously when I kind of saw it in the moment with a very, very excited crowd. But still, I don't think that there's anything that has that kind of creativity and explosion and inventiveness that I've seen this year.
And quirky charm to it. Not consistently through the whole thing, but man, I find the first 30 minutes are among one of the most adorable I've seen in recent memory.
And a very funny, like, just also reminds you how funny Danny Glover can be.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He's in a very like comedy role, and he just kills it each time. Like that, he just has this very, because he always like has this like Danny Glover like I'm grounding the story kind of character type, but he's like just off the reservation in this movie, and I love it. My pick is on Amazon. It is the second season of the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, the Amy Sherman Palladino of Gilmore Girls fame, take on a character that is not called, but bears a resemblance to the career of Joan Rivers and her start in comedy in the late 1950s. I will say, if you like the first season, I think I'm 4 episodes in. You will probably like the second season. However, there's this thing that's happening now. And it's whenever you have a hit show on one of these streaming networks, specifically if you get award contention, it's almost has to be like wrote into your contract that you get to shoot episodes from the first few episodes of your second season in Europe. Like, that's because like Master of None did this, and Marvelous Mrs. Maisel for little apparent reason that can't be wrapped up in 2 episodes, just decides to shoot half of both episodes in France, in Paris. And it's like, all right, it was one of those things where I guess it did good enough numbers for Amazon, and you guys got enough award contention that you're like, yep, we all get to go to Paris. Can't you shoot it in New York? Kind of think we need to go to Paris. Kind of think we need to do a lot of exterior shots on the Seine, and we need to go to the Rodin Museum. It's very important for these characters that they see the Rodin Museum in exquisite detail. So, yeah. Go ahead and book that one, Bezos. We're shooting in July.
I'm sure it's an important story note that you just don't realize, and not the producers going, hey, wouldn't it be fun? The Brady's go to Hawaii. I think that was actually like some sort of tax credit thing or something. Remember that the Brady Bunch when they went to Hawaii?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. And that's like Master of None did like, oh, no, Aziz Ansari is in Italy. And he's just eating at his favorite, at like the restaurants he's really wants to go to. Yeah. So noted foodie Aziz Ansari, who's the producer on a show about his life, just gets to go and eat cool food and they record it.
Quite literally writing scenes like out of what happened when they were there doing location shooting. They're like, hey, this is kind of a funny thing that's happening to us right now. That's what, 5-10 minutes? Got it. Bango. We're writing.
Isn't that's like the Adam Sandler?
Yes, correct.
Like,
yeah, that's why all of a sudden just everything's in Hawaii.
Yeah, just shoot a lot of location films.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I had a thought like I was going to go down another rabbit hole. Hey, gentlemen.
Yes.
It's been weird.
Dang right.
It has been.
Dang right.
Alrighty.
Yep.
Well, we're going to do After Things in just a moment.
Yeah.
If anybody needs a break.
Quick break. Right back.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I did not have a lot of picks this week. I don't know if I'll even have one for After Things, because I've been rewatching Futurama, and that's kind of been my go-to thing. But I will say, like, I definitely like had no love for the post renewal seasons of Futurama, and going back and watching them, a lot of it holds up. I mean, it's not like it's not flawless, right? It's not without some. I think what gets me is that there are just so many like topical references in it, or like there are just enough where I'm like, oh, this is an episode about the Barack Obama birther thing. Oh, you mentioned a Kardashian as a joke in this episode, and that sort of stuff just like really pulls you out of it. And also not a lot of good use of like A plots and B plots, like not having great B plots. But they hold up surprisingly well. I'm on the second to last season or something. And it's I'm just surprised. I liked it more. Hey Justin, welcome back.
Oh, hi.
But I was surprised I liked it more than I thought, and I think binging it helps, just because it's whatever. If I miss something, I can rewind it, or if I miss episodes, whatever. The other thing you can tell that they try to do a lot is like they try to do more sentimental episodes, right? Like after the Fry's dog thing, and what was the other one? Leela's parents not being aliens. Like, they have episodes where they try to do the sentimental stuff, like, Hermes and Bender go have an episode, and then they go find out their secret history connection. It's like, well, it's not like you were hinting towards this. It's not like this was hidden in plain sight. This is just kind of a thing that you did.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because the Simpsons, and that was something that I kind of, realized more when we did the Everything's Coming Up Simpsons podcast with Ali Gertz in Austin, where it was like, man, the Simpsons brand, and obviously that is something that is kind of spun off into Futurama, though they are different shows, was so character first. Right. Like, and really some of the episodes that people remember the most from what is understood as the golden age of that show are these character moments, are like the kind of arcs of these like fake people that were real people to us that we cared about. And I think certainly that became less of an important thing for the Simpsons specifically, but I think I agree with you that the Futurama that I've seen past like a universally acclaimed like sentimental arc in the whole like Fry's dog thing. It's like, but it doesn't work if I don't really care about the characters in a certain way, and beyond it being like, okay, I can find them funny. There can be one-dimensional people banging around with each other that make me laugh. But if you want to make me care about them, like, I have to hook in. Something has to hook in kind of emotionally.
And I think just the storytelling and the writing is not even as like pitch perfect as, the early seasons on Futurama is, right? Like,
are you talking about Disenchanted?
No, I'm talking about Futurama.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't think Disenchanted was ever good.
Disenchanted's are all right, but I think it suffers from the same thing where it's like it's very TV righty, and it doesn't feel polished the way kind of those Fox seasons were, or the Fox seasons of Futurama. And so you get a lot of the like, it's a lot of flanderization, right? Like kind of every character gets pushed into their contrast. And it doesn't really work ever because you lose like a grounded or relatable character. Not that Fry is necessarily the most relatable guy, but he's meant to be like the audience stand-in. But then if you just keep making him a complete moron to such an extreme, I don't know.
Years ago, and this was probably 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I heard a talk by one of the writers for The Simpsons, and he afterwards was talking about the challenge of writing for The Simpsons, because he's like, well, we've already had Homer going to space, we've already had this, what else is left? And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not a writer. I think that's the problem, is that you're looking at like physically, what are we going to do with this? What are we, it was just this sort of that you're not seeing the potential. Like the first few, first 8 seasons or so of that show was amazing because we could go in amazing directions, and all of a sudden discover somebody like a Krusty the Clown, and then the interactions between a Homer and a Krusty and that. But you look at like, there's a point at which they stopped creating really cool characters because it's like they just sort of said, nah, we know what Springfield is now. It's like, well, I don't know that that's true. And I felt that was sort of, I thought the best stuff they do is their Treehouse of Horrors. And, you watch I just watched like one of them where like they go to this Lovecraftian Cthulhu like fishing village, and they're about to be sacrificed, and the sea god, Cthulhu comes out of the water, and then Homer's like, I challenge you to an eating contest. And like it's just this, I mean, it's just kind of this amazing sort of like, those are the best parts. And I'm like, yeah, that's because you're like, let's go some crazy wild, do whatever we want with it. And that's instead of this formula of like, we'll have the A story, B story, the story that's 11 minutes and the story that's 7 minutes, and then we wrap it up and say goodbye and go home. And that's my problem is that they had a formula, and that formula it worked to produce episodes, but it didn't work to become challenging.
Yeah.
So. And yeah, Disenchanted, like, part of my problem with Disenchanted's like, we've seen fantasy and we've seen joke fantasy, we've seen fantasy made fun of, we've had all of this. So it's not like Futurama was kind of like, hey, let's do this fun, irreverent thing about the future, which is still sort of new. But like, if you're a fan of fantasy, a lot of what you read is sort of, parody or, things that make fun of it, etc. So yeah, didn't feel fresh.
Even like the fantasy Futurama movie that they did was very like, oh, this is just going to be like a lot of Lord of the Rings stuff, but like a little too late.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you guys good to do after things?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Then take it away in 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to After Things. I'm Adrian Main, joined by Justin Robert Young.
Oh, hi, friends.
Mr. Bryce Castillo.
Hi.
Brian Brushwood.
Ahoy!
A couple things to talk about. One was I read an article that was talking about the kind of the place that online media is in right now. The last several years we watched, the rise of Vice, BuzzFeed, Vox as sort of this. I think kind of in the Facebook article sharing world that they said, hey, let's. It kind of was like a revival of like, the rise of the blogs from over 10 years ago. But now we had this consolidation where people would build these platforms and then, you'd advertise them, monetize them, et cetera. And they became kind of big entities. But now they're finding out that like, ad rates are still going down and producing content's hard. And some of these appear to be struggling. And I wanted to figure out, let's put it to the team. What is the future of media?
Oh boy.
Yeah, Brian.
I think it was it last week on this show that we talked about the idea of
Cheap jobs,
of getting back to paying for media and whether it be in Warcraft Gold or some other fictional thing are we still on board with the possibility of that, or do we think?
Well, here's the problem, Brian.
Hello, big media. It's me, Brian. I had an idea. It involves creators getting paid directly with a virtual currency that maybe has tangible value and doesn't require a credit card number so people would feel good about spending it freely, sir.
Silence!
I'm
big
sorry.
Media is about to speak.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Brian.
Yes, big media.
The problem with your idea, Brian, the Jeep Job proposal.
Yes, Jeep Drops. That's what I called them, sir. Just last week, I was telling it to my friends Justin and Andrew and Bryce, and they all seemed to feel like it had a real potential, big media.
People won't pay for something when it's freely available out there.
Well, sir, if I may, is that entirely true? It seems like all of Patreon is filled with people who are paying for something that they're getting for free otherwise.
What's the total size? So the question is what's the market size and what is the total number of podcasts, that monetize on Patreon? And we're talking about the blogosphere, the newsosphere, whatever. Is that where we're going to go? Because part of it is, the idea that, are we going to go switch over to, are we going to switch over to a model where like blog posts, news posts, things like this, Patreon's a great model because with particularly podcasts and stuff where you have a much better relationship with your awesome, beautiful, sexy audience.
Ooh, oh my God. Hey man, I was listening to, I was talking about our audience the other day and I was like, damn, they're looking fit. They're looking good.
Yeah, you guys look. I want to kiss you.
Well, I guess the challenge comes into is that your I think the biggest disruptor is going to be as we shift more to automatic content creation, is that you're going to get that those quick hits, those pieces and whatever auto-generated stuff. And if you're BuzzFeed and you can say, well, we could try to like BuzzFeed like has like they're trying to sell like products and stuff like cooking ware and things like this. Like you look at the directions they're going into. Vox makes TV shows. They're becoming kind of a traditional media company in that right. But it's not clear that that's really the way to go. And I think like a paid model for part of it. But if there's somebody out there able to, if you're somebody who says, hey, you know, I can make money. I can, Jeff Bezos famously says that like your slim margin is, you know, my opportunity, you know? And so when somebody says, well, we're going to make BuzzFeed, like paid model, like a subscription model for BuzzFeed ain't going to help BuzzFeed.
Man, it's so, it's so weird that, if you go back and you watch me launching the Scam Stuff channel, and it's going to be tempting for me to want to portray myself as a visionary or whatever. I'm no visionary. I am somebody whose back against was
wait, Brian, is that a vision?
Silence! The visionary will speak now.
In 2012, I was no visionary. I was somebody who found out that his wife was pregnant with their third child and realized
his child shall be born, he said.
I was somebody who realized that I couldn't afford to pay for everything by going out on tour. And of course, in the music sector, that was the big mantra, was like, oh, well, you'll make it up by going on tour. You'll get famous. All your stuff will be free and pirated, but you'll be on tour. And then meanwhile, there's some people who can't go on tour. And they have to figure out a way to make cash. So and there were moves I couldn't make because this is before I think in 2012, you know, I'm working for Discovery Digital Online, doing Scam School, which you know, it's not like I could go sell ads on this thing that is a property that I'm doing for another company. Same thing. Modern Rogue did not exist. I was working on I knew a TV show was in the works, but again, that wasn't going to be owned by me. That's me working for National Geographic. There weren't many moves. And so Scam Stuff was born out of desperation. And so it was just like, I don't know what else to do. I know that I wrote a Scam School book and it seems to have sold. That was great. I wrote a sequel to it. That seems to have sold. And we've told this story before, but it was halfway through what was going to be a crunch weekend where we were desperately going to put out a third Scam School book and release it digitally, like in a matter of days, just so I could stop sinking farther and farther into debt. And then as we realized, like, oh my gosh, this is just never going to end, we had the idea of like, okay, what if whatever that engine is that caused people to want to buy our books, what if that could be applied to something that wasn't so creatively draining over and over and over again? So in 2012, we did an Indiegogo to create Scam Stuff. And of course, you know, the story is it continues to be the most transformative thing that we've done. And it was able to finance all these changes and foundings of new properties like the Modern Rogue, that now we are in a position to sell advertisements on and to do brand deals with. And it's very curious to me that juggernauts like BuzzFeed are essentially making the same move that I made 5 years ago. That I find that deeply validating on a totally selfish personal level, and has me very, very excited that maybe I happened to luck into a smart decision 5 years ago.
Perhaps. Now, I will point out that when Yahoo was struggling in the late 90s or early 2000s for profitability, Yahoo started a product line. Yahoo branded DVD players and Yahoo branded merchandise, and that's considered sometimes a death rattle.
Correct. And that is, if I can run that through the filter of how we grew Scam Stuff, we figured out very quickly that we could never compete on commodity products, that everything we had to do had to be, quote unquote, an original. And I'm using air quotes because that doesn't mean that, that we had to build everything from scratch and have a totally unique original idea. You'll notice that a lot of the stuff on Scam Stuff we make sure that they're particular bundles, and that's specifically for, okay, what is the experience that we're selling? And we've talked about the Houdini cell is a good example of it. You could deconstruct all of the pieces and, much like a iPhone teardown, calculate, okay, this is the actual dollar amount that it costs to get all these pieces done individually, and that this is an estimated projection of the profits they're making. But if we do our job right, you realize that buying all those pieces individually gets you no closer to the story that we're trying to sell, with that. So everything on the store, and we're getting better and better at it over time. We're realizing that we're selling experiences and stories in a way that I don't think a Yahoo branded DVD player or although a BuzzFeed cookbook is a good example of that. You were saying you were interested in it, Bryce?
Oh yeah, Tasty, which is BuzzFeed's cooking brand, has like they have a couple of cookbooks now, which is like some of the stuff that they do videos on, but then now they're also doing like, hey, we sell cookware sets. Hey, we sell the little glass bowl things that you see us use. Hey, cookie sets.
And forgive me for putting it in mockable terms, a la Night Attack, but what they're really selling is the experience of doing the stuff from the cookbook and not having to go out and get the right gizmos for everything.
Yeah. I mean, they even sell I don't even know if they still sell it, but they at one point sold like induction cookers that they used in their videos. So it's like the entire process that they do essentially becomes.
Look, I think that funnel is so much of what blog money making has become is Amazon affiliate, and they know what they're getting paid on. They know what their readers are buying, and so they can say, all right, what if some of these we just made ourselves? Like, what if we became the Amazon and said, okay, well, we'll sell you these things that we know you're already coming to and using us as a portal to go buy. As long as we can kind of compete on, price or create the reason why you need, this is the hottest deal,
right, then
that makes sense. Where I think scam stuff is different is you are creating a more traditional mail order experience that is kind of devoid from the art. Like you literally just took your audience and said, hey, are you also interested in being a mail order customer for my curation of products? And they were excited, and you tell the story, but it's all kind of within that scam stuff universe. It's not like Scam School or Modern Rogue had an 8-part series on Houdini leading up to the release of the Houdini's cell. It was all there on the website page. It was in the copy of the email, and that's very traditionally like that's if this were the 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s. It would be a thing that would a little magazine that would go out to everybody.
I mean, you're 100% right in that. I mean, really, I guess I'm playing the same game as the Sharper Image played, or the J. Peterman catalog from Seinfeld fame. Or even more recently, Robert Redford's Sundance brands, where now you got Sundance like salads for women or whatever. You have a halo and an ecosystem, and as long as there's the belief, hopefully an earned belief, that the person who you trust is personally curating all this, then it feels like it can work, which I think it's interesting on the BuzzFeed example, because clearly they've built up, what's the food series that it's branded under?
Tasty.
So they've built up enough credit with Tasty that you believe, okay, if they're going to do the same filters that they do for the quality content of Tasty, then you're interested in whatever cookbook and cookware they recommend.
Yeah. And their stuff is commoditized too, right? Like, those little glass bowls, I bought a bunch of those on Amazon last week for probably way cheaper.
Right.
But a lot of their stuff is like, it's colorful and it's very visual, and so it plays into kind of what is attractive about Tasty's videos, which is that it looks very good.
You just hit on it.
Right.
They're selling that stuff because you partially like them because they take pretty photos and they take pretty videos, and you want your photos and videos in an increasingly shareable world to be as pretty as the Tasty videos. So when you cook your thing and you're like, oh, look what I made, and in the background it's a pot, a pan, and a few bowls that you use to mix your carbonara pasta, you want them to look cool and good and fun and fresh, and not like some plastic tub that you used margarine out of that now you're using as a measuring cup.
Yeah.
Trends I've been observing, one is like there's a blog, one of the blogs I go to, like half of the content's like, hey, check out, like you think it's a review of something cool and you realize no, it's an Amazon affiliate link, and little there was the idealistic sort of version of what journalism and the web was going to be that we'd hear 15, 20 years ago of like, oh, we'll do this and we'll have the wall. And like when layoffs happen, the wall gets thinner, then the wall goes away. And you take a brand like Vice, which is, this irreverent brand, which is, truth to power. And you go to look at their page and like, hey, look at this video. Oh, it's created with Geico. What does that mean? Is this a sponsor? Is this advertisement? I don't know. When you say it's created with a corporate partner and it used to be sponsored post, sponsored this, but they found out, people don't read them as much. So we'll make that. I watched like CNN do that and other ones like we'll make the font smaller and smaller and smaller, which is like, why are you doing this? Because you're hoping people won't notice it and will click on it, which is disingenuous.
So I think if we're looking at it, then we can agree that basing a media model on advertising is probably not future proof, right? That we have already seen enough of an erosion there that you would want to build, if let's say theoretically somebody were trying to make a larger media empire, you would probably not just say, all right, well, views, subs, and then the advertising, and then we wait by the dock of the bay for the advertising ship to roll in and pour the money out.
Yes.
I don't know. I think that if the problem is this, as I see it, is let's say we launched, let's do scam weird jury media, right? And in conglomeration with Castillo, we decide to form this thing. We're like, you know what? We're going to produce X amount of podcasts.
Hold on, I like Scam Weird Jury Media, a Neshcom company.
Yes,
a Nesh company.
We form this thing and we say, oh yeah, we're going to do X number of blog posts. This we know that like, hey, this is what impressions are going for right now and blog stuff. Well, the thing that often happens is you go like, and that will keep falling. That rate at which what you're going to get paid for impressions is going to keep falling. That's the problem a lot of these media companies have is this year you're making, a penny per 100,000 or whatever. I mean, remember when like you could measure them like and by what 1,000 impressions would get you. And now because of social media and, the content machines of Facebook and all these other things, it's fractional. But if we said this right now, we'd be screwed because in 3 years time you could say like, yeah, but the payment per impression is going to go so low that won't work. But if we said, okay, we're going to build an AI or something that's going to increase exponentially the amount of content it creates, which is sort of like how Facebook works or whatever, then I'd say, yeah, then you could still do an ad model. You could say, yes, we've looked at the curve, the rate at which these things, the impressions, what you get paid per impression decline. We think we can improve our targeting rate, but also we're not going to have 50 writers writing this stuff. We're going to have 50 writers, and this year they're going to be able to write 100,000 articles. Next year they'll figure out if you know a way to do 1 million and whatever. That might work. But yeah, a traditional media thing, no, you're screwed.
Wow.
In my opinion, because I just watched that erosion of that wall, and these blogs and places that would have been the first ones to cry foul several years ago about like, oh, well, this isn't really clearly marked as advertising. Look what they're doing. It's unethical. Look at this site here. They're not telling you this is thing. It's like, now they're doing it because they like food and eating and having jobs. So solved.
Yeah. I mean, here's what I would say. I do think that what seems to be the trend, both macro and micro, is that media is a great way to get people into the door for something else. Mm-hmm. And it's the reason why you're finding a lot of the something else's that are buying up media companies now that they're kind of cheap, because advertising totally sort of like fell off a cliff from where it was and its importance. So I think that, Brian's idea of like, hey, look, here's a mail order universe, and we can take those lessons and we can learn, like, now if we do want to do more direct merch, if let's say Modern Rogue wanted to start selling Jason Murphy's pants that are like a running joke on the show, you would know
world's not ready for this,
why to do it, where to source it, that kind of stuff. Like for whatever that widget would be, you would know more how to be able to get people into a reliable funnel of effectively mail marketing and target for them exactly what they want, be it something that is either a story you were telling them just from your initial approach or a payoff from a larger artistic venture. And I think it's easier when you're someone like Brian or a podcasting like thing where you can kind of take your show where you want it, even if you're covering, I think The Ringer's been a good example of like, they're covering sports, but they've kind of created a little mini fashion line for themselves of just well-designed T-shirts that smart sports fans want to wear so they can signify themselves as smart sports fans. That's kind of a smart idea that you're allowed to do.
My hesitation comes from this is that, and I think, yes, you need to, like, TechCrunch, years ago started doing the TechCrunch conferences, which was a smart thing. Yes. You go to TechCrunch because I want to know what's coming. I want to know what's there. TechCrunch could do a great job of getting the best guests for that. And we're seeing more of that, like Recode and other ones will do these conferences as a way to basically, and also it's sort of there are multiple ways to make money from a conference. One is just pure admission. Also, if you're a company or whatever, and you want to show off and you want to present. And that's the thing too. You have to look at these TechCrunch conferences and some of these startup, like we're doing a startup conference. They're not there to help you get funding. They're there to make money with the dream that you bring your startup there or whatever. It's the illusion of access. It's the illusion of this. It's not necessarily, their incentive isn't quite necessarily what we may think it is. Not that makes it wrong, but you have to keep that in mind. What's interesting to me is looking at like BuzzFeed, like they had last month reported BuzzFeed makes $50 million in e-commerce revenues, which means they had $50 million in sales, which sounds good, but like they have a 65-person team working on this. And if you factor in like what their actual profit is or whatever, the problem is it's like now you're a consumer brand trying to figure out how to create products that's already an extremely competitive space, and it's really hard to do that. It's hard enough to launch a product and create something. How do you make it work? How do you succeed at this? So I don't know. It's not the answer, but I know it's a hard answer. It's a hard one because you're still now facing the problem of.
Yeah, I don't know what other moves there are. That article that just got flashed up sort of was asking the question, what's the point of having a BuzzFeed membership? That would be direct paying for the content.
Yeah, like
then
NPR.
You can rent out your bandwidth, your space, your good name to someone else to get a Dollar Shave Club or whatever. You can sell your own stuff. It's not clear to me how else you fund all of these things, especially in a world where the moment you come up with something original and a new idea, it's going to be 20 minutes until somebody is copying it or possibly doing it faster, better, stronger, whatever.
And I think that gets to the heart of, you have to figure out what the real value is of what you do, and not what you want the value to be. Is like, I write wonderful tech blog posts. Like, yeah, but it's a commodity. And what you've done, Brian, and what Justin, what you've done is you've got a relationship with an audience, and those relationships are extremely powerful. That brand loyalty is significant, and that's what you're both looking to expand and do that. I think that one of the problems of some of these brands is they can be so interchangeable, because writers go here and there. There is no strong voice. Vice has sort of a voice, but Vice has sort of become a lot of different things, and it's not a rare voice online. It was just.
Look, if you have a camera drone and high test marijuana, you too can have the unique voice of Vice media and videos.
Yeah. I don't know. I think part of it comes down to sort of asking that question, like, what do I have that's of value? And like, Brian, it's your personality, your relationship with people, Justin, ditto. And I use Justin as an example often. I'll point out like his politics YouTube channel doesn't have a ginormous amount of people viewing it, but the people who view it are highly dedicated to Justin and worth way more than a casual random YouTube viewer.
Well, and likewise, the fact that Justin, yes, of course, his personality and his his charisma, but more importantly, I believe, is his unique nonpartisan take, his ability to be, you notice that, when you're watching ESPN, they're not loudly proclaiming like, oh, these anti-Cowboys other teams, what a piece of work they are. The fact that you're able to bring insights, to me, it's the insights, the about the game in general, not about the perspective from one team or the other.
I agree. What else?
So Bryce pulled up a very interesting site that I'd not heard of before, and now I'm looking at it, it's very interesting. Graphtreon, which is data on Patreon, and taking a look at like what Patreon, Patreon, we think is a wonderful example for facilitating you connecting with your audience and making that happen. By the way, patreon.com/weirdthings. And if you click on the statistics of what they've accumulated, and I don't know, like this seems to be fairly recent, what's fascinating to me is you look at like the total number of individual pledges, like 5 million. The estimated number of payouts, 12.3 million. Number of creators, 126,000. So it's a tiny, tiny market. And if you click on the number one market is, I believe, video. And I think second is podcasts. Let me take a look through here.
So yeah, video is at 3.8 million per month, and podcast is at 1.4 million per month.
Quick proviso: all of these are just the reported public numbers. Like, for example, our numbers are public, but somebody like Philip DeFranco does not make his numbers public.
Interesting. So I wonder, do we have any estimate of like what percentage are public and what aren't?
I believe the majority of them are public. It seems like only people at the top who are afraid that making their numbers public will reduce people's enthusiasm for contributing.
But it does look like that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars hidden from these stats.
Yeah. Or easily millions, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be curious. But we'd be curious to figure that out. And that's one of the things too, is that we don't have a whole lot of data on a lot of this stuff. Like we don't know. There's so much about the business and the scope of business that we don't know, and sometimes even companies don't know. Once a company gets large enough, it's more divisions, people wanting to protect their jobs and groups within companies competing against each other. And you take we saw that like the BuzzFeed, we had 50 million in revenue. It's like, well, you got 63 employees and that revenue doesn't say profit. So like, are you earning? When you're having your heart-to-heart meeting with your bosses and stuff, are you saying, well, we increased it this year over year, so we think in 3 years' time this will be the major revenue source. So right now we're costing you money, but we don't think we will all time. And here, but I was just curious, like looking at like the podcasting thing, like this is tiny. This is really, really tiny. You look at the statistics on podcasts. So we see here there are 678,000 individual pledges, and a lot of those are people doing multiples. Like, I probably pay for like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So we're probably looking at maybe 200 to 300,000 people paying for podcasts. The total estimated public payouts is 1.4 million, 1.5 million, which is, again, that's monthly. So
spread out over nearly 10,000 creators. All of a sudden, that doesn't seem like a gigantic thing. It's like maybe 1,500 per month per podcast on the average in total.
Yeah, let's see. Let's do the math on that. So,
yeah, this says estimated monthly payouts that's 1.4 million, right?
But
it's
regardless,
like $166 per podcast.
Wait, is it?
1.5 million divided by like 8,800.
Yep.
Yeah, it's $166 per podcast.
This 8,000 doesn't include podcasts that have no patrons. So there could possibly be zero patron campaigns.
And plus also that 1.5 million is again only reported numbers, but I perceive that more people are comfortable reporting their numbers on podcasts over video.
Yeah. But I mean, it's still, it's on one hand, I look at these numbers like, oh, but I'm like, well, those are monthly. Like, it's like, Patreon's bringing in like $144 million, a year towards creators, which is wonderful. I mean, it's just wonderful that exists. And we're early stages. So I guess what I'm saying is like, yeah, this is just the starting point there. So solutions like this are sort of neat, but anyhow, worth looking at this, worth looking at the other side of this. Like, streaming, one of these things, that's other stuff too. It's like, sometimes we go, why don't they do this? And you have to look at the economics of it. You have to look at the model of that and go like, well, this won't scale beyond this point. It won't sustain something else. So, but are we going to see like, to the Jeep Drop or something like that? Are we going to see a player like Amazon come in and say, hey, we know Amazon is already making a lot of money in advertising and they want to get bigger and bigger and bigger and not just within the Amazon ecosystem?
Man, you know what I could totally see, and it's a little bit dark to even imagine. I can see Amazon in as soon as a year or two say, hey, we have an exciting new opportunity. Our new AI bots listen to every one of your podcasts and contextualize the things you're talking about. You're not even selling a thing. You're talking about the Super Bowl game. You're talking about this. You're talking about your favorite commercials. You're talking about your favorite science fiction books or whatever. Our bots will listen to all of your podcasts. If you just click this checkbox, we will run all ads based on who's pixeled as being confirmed as somebody who listens to your podcast, and they will see relevant ads because we now have an idea of what's on their mind, and that'll help us sell stuff. And again, it'll all be relevant. And you'll just get checks in the mail, and you don't have to think about, you're not selling anything. You're just being you crazy diamond. And all you need to do is allow us to follow and know what your podcast says and allow people who we think to be your fans to receive ads placed from us that are relevant to their interests due to neural network, AI, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been playing with the Amazon transcription service, and actually I've been testing it on our podcast, by the way, just because like having multiple audio sources to see accuracy is still not super, super high. It can identify separate speakers, but if you're looking for keywords and keyword insertion and stuff, I mean, our keyword placement, totally, totally viable. We've flirted with that for years. Like we had a project years ago to do, automatic ad insertion, which other people are doing now, which, other people who are smarter and, follow through on things. It could be because there's the thing we see, Google did AdWords, and AdWords were a super cheap, easy way to put ads everywhere because you could do hundreds of thousands of impressions and it didn't cost you anything as far as human labor. And then we said, oh, that's the way things work. And then, with Facebook and the Facebook stream of data, you could do a model like that. You watch Snapchat struggle because they don't have quite their version of it. But, I don't.
I could totally
also,
picture.
let me pitch this then. Let's look at the Jeep Drop. Let's look at who could step in and make a micro payment system that you would trust. That would be able to say, all right, look, we want to save news. We want to safeguard news. It is something that we even find an altruistic point of view for. And we want you to be able to pay in a seamless way that you don't even have to think about it. You just know that you care about this kind of stuff and you want to reward the people that make it. And so maybe it's a recurring fee that you put up, but there's some clever frictionless way that you just kick this entity a little bit of money and then it gets spread in a very smart and interesting way that raises the bottom line of all boats. I would wonder whether or not that company is, I think firstly, you would need somebody that has a lot of credit cards already. So it creates getting into that tent a little easier. And also somebody with maybe a bone to pick with an anti-advertisement harvesting kind of agenda. Like, I don't know if Apple would not fit both of those categories.
I'm sure the will is there, but if Apple and social media and stuff, like look at, Apple came out with the, Apple News, right? Do you use the News app on your phone at all?
I've actually used it more on my watch. My current watch interface has the news right front and center, and I found myself swiping through the top 5 stories. I will say it has not distinguished itself as particularly useful to me.
I'm like really into Feedly, so I use Feedly a lot. I haven't bothered to really dig down into news to try to do this. I know from some advertisers where there are some media outlets, they weren't super thrilled with it because they're not seeing the same sort of ad rates,
right?
And Apple's goal of like, hey, and like you click over on Wired, like they'll sell you an subscription to Wired on here, but like, I mean, I haven't been really thrilled with Wired's coverage in a long time. So, I used to be a big subscriber to the magazine, then I watched it get thinner and thinner and thinner, and then ads become, I'm like, oh, if I need to buy a watch or a car, pick up a copy of Wired magazine, and then get a half-assed piece on something that I felt like they should have paid the writer to do more,
I agree with all of your criticisms, which is why, and I don't think that this is likely, but just to muse on it, I think the idea of Apple being more than of a, hey, look, kick us X amount of dollars a month, and we'll make the deals with the New York Times and the Washington Post and Wired and Wall Street Journal. These are meetings that we can take, that we can probably knock that out. And it'll be seamless. If it's on your phone, if it's on your browser and you're logged into iCloud, then we already know what, if you agree that we can give these people your money now, congratulations. All these sites are now unlocked for you, and we distribute the cash based on the stuff that you read.
And I could see Apple making like a big lifestyle bundle, right? Like, hey, give us $30 a month, and you'll get Apple Music, and you'll get access to whatever the Apple Video thing is going to be. You get Apple News, which will have New York Times or Washington Post, like unlimited access to, to news outlets. Like, I could see them making a very like home focused, all encompassing plan.
I could see that, and I certainly think that Amazon Prime is even further along the lines of doing that.
100%.
Right.
But the problem is that, and this is one of the problems with like streaming music and things like this. There's things that sound great to the consumer. If I pay $10, I get all this. But then there are things that are really bad for the content producers. Right. And if you're New York Times and you're like, okay, Apple says they'll pay us 60 cents a month, or 30 cents a month to have, New York Times for every Apple subscriber. One, it sounds kind of cool, but then you're like, yeah, but if everybody that wants to get a New York Times subscription decides to do that instead, we're not going to get by. These deals are often made in the short run because to see how well they work out. In the long run, it doesn't scale because it's like, no, we want that whatever near $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever that price is, and we can undersell it for a while, but it's not a sustainable business model in the long run because, there are not enough people paying.
Dude, 150%, because I do think that Prime is further along in doing something like that, and yet there's a reason why, as a Prime subscriber, you only get a discount on a Washington Post subscription, despite the fact that Bezos owns both, although separately. I think that if there was a deal to be made there of putting Washington Post as part of your Prime membership, they would have made that deal before. But I am sure that there are, the accounting department of the Post is like, well, I don't think that this is going to work out for us, guys. Like, we're not going to be able to, even if we open the floodgates and we get, whatever that fractional cent is from an Amazon Prime subscription that has to already be split a million different ways and feed a million different mouths. I don't think that we're really going to be able to do it. And it also might create some antitrust issues and some lobbying problems for Bezos. But
I'm trying to think of, and not necessarily streaming media, but streaming media definitely is the big one. How many of these like subscription-based consumption models are profitable? And of those, or out of everything, all separate question, how many of those are maybe exploitative to creators, right? Like you look at, like, is Netflix profitable yet? Or aren't they still like keep getting into debt? You look at Spotify, which doesn't really pay artists a lot because the use is so high.
Netflix is, I think Netflix is still, it's growth phase. And the beautiful thing about Netflix too is that like, and the difference between them and Spotify is that Netflix is shifting more towards in-house things they own.
Sure.
And there's going to be a point at which they can say, hey, we've got globally, 1 billion Netflix subscribers, paying us, $50 billion. We're making, we're 1 billion subscribers at, 10 billion, 100. If we're making $40 billion a year, whatever, we can spend 20% of this on content, and everybody's happy, and our model is there. And then that's why with Netflix, the model right now is it's one of the reasons why they're shifting away from Marvel is they want to own the IP outright because they make a lot of money from Stranger Things merchandise and this. And they bought the rights to Marvel stuff because initially, why get Netflix streaming? Oh, you get all this cool Marvel. They wanted to use the Marvel name. Now they're like, why are we paying? We have this platform that is huge. There's 100 million Netflix subscribers in the United States. It's a great platform. Now we can use this platform. Their next area of growth, their content is solved for them. I would say that they could exist forever at the model they're at right now. They could dial back some of what they pay for licensing fees and still have enough content to keep people happy. But their next area of growth is going to be owning IP that has value outside of streaming. Like I talked this on Twitter, like a Netflix theme park is not a crazy idea when you think about, IP and stuff.
Sure. But
sorry, real quick. By the way, in 2017, Netflix's reported net profit was $558.9 million.
Okay. Okay.
So it's making money.
It's making money, but also they're, reinvesting all of that into more, doubling down on content, like Andrew said, like HBO maybe, like that's I don't know.
Well, again, talk about the thing that needs to exist just because it's a entryway into another thing. AT&T bought Time Warner, and a lot of that was HBO because they can use that glittering lore of hey, get on Uverse and you'll get Game of Thrones for free, right? Like, or you'll get a bundle with, because now we own HBO,
right?
So those places are in good models. They're in good hands, when they own the content outright. Or Spotify, the problem they have is they have to pay all these licensing fees, and that can keep creeping up unless they start to produce and become an record album themselves. But even then, it's challenging. Where Netflix is in a much better position. Now, just going to throw this out: BuzzFeed podcasts.
I feel like I have actually looked through the handful of podcasts that they do. Very recently. I
hope you enjoyed what you saw because they let go of their in-house podcasting team a couple months ago.
Oh, really?
And if you go to BuzzFeed podcasts to see the list of podcasts there
were none that I recognized in
and
of this
you
stuff.
have like one from you scroll down there, like there's a Lena Dunham podcast,
right.
Woman of the Hour season 1. And the last episode of that was 3 years ago. I don't know if we're going to get season 2. But apparently,
I would doubt it. Funny story there. I was at a wedding a couple weeks ago with a friend of mine from college who is now the producer for Slow Burn, the series on Slate that was very acclaimed and was named one of the top podcasts for this year. All about first season was about the Watergate. Second season was about the Clinton impeachment. And when we were talking, we were just going through the business of a big podcast and everything because I was just picking his brain. And I was like, yeah, what didn't Slate lay off a bunch of podcast people? And they're like, yeah, they laid off some of their other podcast people, but they love us and we want to be there forever and yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, they need you for what you're doing more than you need them. Like, I think at this point, your podcast install base is what it is. They probably helped a lot to launch because they're going to help you stand out because Slate's a good brand for podcast listeners. But at this point, I don't really know how much, if they're not giving you a bigger budget or more something that you can't get by yourself, like, I don't know how much it matters. And then I emailed him for something else last week, and he's like, hey, funny you should mention what you pitched to me. I got back to work, and my boss pitched me the same idea because he'd been talking to venture funders. And so I don't know if you noticed, but Slow Burn left Slate, and the new season of whatever the new podcast is going to be called will not be involved in Slate. And I don't know if they got the name or the feeds, but hopefully they did. But it's like, look, that's not there anymore. Like the idea of the podcast network as part of another thing for that, like for a predominantly display advertising and cookware reseller, there's not a lot of money there for BuzzFeed. There wasn't a lot of money there for Slate.
Well, I'm gonna give you my takedown on this, because I look through this and it's like they looked at like a list of top Apple podcasts. All right, podcasts there. And they said, let's do our version of that. Let's do our version of that. And granted, these were already things that had thousands of different versions of that. And that was problematic, where, what's amazing is how, like, the success of Serial, where, hey, we're going to follow a crime story over, 8 episodes or this. And that's, and of course, then everybody says, we're going to go do that. And it's like, well, yeah, or just a suggestion. Why did it work? It was very different but engaging content, longer form engaging content. What else is out there? What else is out there that you could go do? And that's, and I think
although I will say the podcasts are similar to me, as the writing world. That, like, oftentimes when you're done with the big book when you finish reading Game of Thrones and now there's no more Game of Thrones, the next thing that you might want to read is another immersive fantasy kind of thing.
True. And if you're a fantasy writer, now you're going to be competing with 1,000 other people that said, I'm going to create this next.
So exactly. So you better hope it's good. I mean, ultimately, like, there's an audience, but there was a reason why when you did the Jessica Blackwood novels, it was like you were also steering toward a popular genre.
But what I did though was I went into a market that was popular, right? And
yes.
And I think that crime thing is it's a genre. I'm saying it's not a bad genre to go into, but you're always going to be following, if you're I went in there because I go, hey, James Patterson's on top. I don't mind being, distant from there, but that's an existing genre. People buy stuff every month and do this, okay? But also, I didn't say I'm going to do kind of a note for note version. I did a different enough differentiated myself in what I was doing. Sure. So my stuff did quite well, and I guess that's my point. I said, okay, I'm not going to do the same thing that's out there that's been done there, because I don't want it to be like Ursat's version of this other thing. I have to pick a category. To try to define a new category in books is hard to do that. What they did with Serial was great, was they had this really cool longer form thing that was well produced and engaging. And I'm saying, like, if you're BuzzFeed, it would have been great if they did, long form crime reporting or something. I don't know, something, because BuzzFeed has done some great reporting.
Oh, no, right? They've done really good stuff.
And you look at their podcast, and it's just this Me Too. And that's my point, is that it's like, if you're going into a super crowded marketplace and you expect yourself to differentiate yourself without any real reason to do that, it's problematic. I would say if you're BuzzFeed and you can pay for really good content, they should have taken, partner up a really good podcaster with one of their best writers and say, let's do this deep dive. Let's do a really cool, like what you're doing, with your, your political season stuff. I think that.
Well, and I bet for BuzzFeed, which is very, very heavily in the written and video elements, it's easier for them to say, okay, well, let's do a video. Let's not do a podcast version of that thing when we already have these other verticals that are our bread and butter, right?
But I think they would just complement each other. I think that it's my opinion on that is that, like, you've got a strength. You've actually, BuzzFeed is one of these because I always think of them as sort of this airhead, memeable, whatever, silly sort of stuff, which they are. But then every now and then I get delighted when I read about some really good reporting that came from BuzzFeed, and I think that's instead of doing everything on that podcast page for the most part is just super disposable. It's done in a million other places. There's nothing in it that appeals. It feels like, oh, this is a different, some different voices that we may not have heard as much. There's, we've got a Muslim American doing a podcast there, whatever, but it's like nothing that's really, I don't know. And like, I know they did what's the TV show or something? They did that
I believe they've got a Netflix. No, that's Fox.
Yeah, and I can't even get past the promos because it's just it's your stereotypical kind of, East Coast sort of writer. Like, I decided to go look into this. It's like, oh God, just write the article and maybe I'll read it.
But that's the thing, right? Is like, should they stick with the mediums that are working, or should they try?
But I think here's, I guess, and I think we're dancing around the idea that hey, look, everything is separate. Every medium has its own story to tell, and either you are going to take it seriously, or you are going to just say, all right, bare minimum, we can launch based on the page impressions. We can launch a new podcast, and we can auto flow it as an ad into X amount of impressions, and reliably we know we'll be able to generate on BuzzFeed readership, Y amount, a advertiser friendly, guaranteeable amount of downloads for that. Right. And we'll do it all in house, and we'll have a bunch of writers in their off time that really want to get into podcasting, do it, and maybe won't pay them much more, and we'll do it on the cheap. That'll be it, right? Instead of saying, no, look, if you want to get into podcasting, you should really think about getting into the business of podcasting. It should be a sustainable kind of thing if you want to do that. And it seems like for BuzzFeed, it wasn't, which I can understand them trying to just push that dinghy out in the water on the cheap and then watching it capsize and being like, well, turns out we can't sail.
Yeah. So there we go. Problem solved.
Nailed it.
My advice is this. Is if you're going to pick something like, Serial worked for the same reason, I've been lucky with books. People like crime. People like these sorts of things. And I don't say avoid crime at all as a podcast topic, but Serial was successful and was a leader because they went into when everybody else is doing, we're on a couch, we're going to talk the super light disposable content. They did deep form, deep dive into something really well researched, really well put together and presented, and it was extremely engaging. And all of a sudden, it became, now everybody wants to do that. And my point is I have to believe there are other ideas and other kinds of things out there, and that's go dig into that. So there we go. Problem solved.
Nice.
Any picks?
Yeah, I want to just give a shout out. I don't even know if she listens to this show, but on Saturday,
your wife.
Yeah. Well, I know she doesn't listen. I got an amazing gift. Be Rainbow Bright in the chat sent along a handcrafted.
Oh, it's amazing.
Oh, that's cute.
Jury doll.
It's a doll.
This is my buddy sized. So I just want to, on every show that I'm on this week, I want to show it off and give her credit because it is amazing. There were a couple other Frog Pants hosts that she made them for, but there we go. The My Jury doll, which comes with
a little microphone.
Its own microphone that when you press in the center. There we go. One of the intros from Unfriend Me. But there we go. My pick is Be Rainbow Bright being an amazing human being and making me this amazing doll.
Aww, that is amazing.
That's great.
I got it in time for the picks.
Yep.
You did.
Counterpart, it's back. You should watch it. In fact, I'm going to say you might be able to just start at the beginning of season 2. That'd be an interesting experience. Hop on the old, open up the free trial of Stars on Amazon for a week and watch 1 week of episodes.
Is the first? I guess it just premiered. Is the premiere any good?
Yeah, it's a different framework. You know, it takes for granted that you know things about the worlds and who is where, but even if you don't, it's a different thing because they've shut down the border between the two places. I'm going to speak kind of in code, and so now it's a game of rooting out who doesn't belong in one place or another.
I see. Huh. Okay. Very cool. It's on Stars. I don't think I have a pick this week. I was mentioning between the shows that I've been watching a lot of Futurama, but I don't want to pick Futurama for the third week in a row. So, yeah, I think I'm out of picks. Andrew?
My pick is I just started listening to it. You got to get past the and I feel like I just mentioned this to a friend, so I feel like I picked this last week, but I'm pretty sure I didn't. You got to get past the first, 40 minutes of like, why, what's this book about? What's this book about? You sold me. I bought it. Let's what we're going to show you, what we're going to talk about. And that is Blitzscaling by Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman doesn't get as much attention as, let's say, Elon Musk or, hasn't been cast as the villain like Peter Thiel. But Reid Hoffman was one of the other founders of PayPal. Reid Hoffman, after the success of PayPal, went off to create LinkedIn and other enterprises. And so Blitzscaling is his approach towards, hey, if you want to build a high-value business, this is the way you do it. And it is counterintuitive. He talks about, like, data that says, like, you don't want to go. He co-wrote it with Chris Ye, by the way. I should point that out. And Bill Gates wrote the foreword. So when Bill Gates says, hey, this is worth listening to, it's probably, something to take account for. He talks about the idea that sacrifice efficiency for fast growth. He says when you're trying to create a company, your goal is to grow really, really fast. He says even if it's inefficient, even if you risk, upsetting customers, even if your products are going to break, which none of those should be the ideal. You're better to grow fast and challenge yourself more than, he says, companies that have steady yearly. He says the most successful companies have higher than 40% growth rates by the time they reach $100 million, meaning the time they reach $100 million valuation, they're increasing their value at 40% or more greater a year. 20% year growth, Wall Street says, oh, this is really good. He says, yeah, but if you want to be a Facebook, if you want to be a $1 billion company, a successful company, your rate of growth has to be much faster. And he gives examples of how Airbnb had some nice steady growth, and then they were threatened by these German brothers who build knockoffs of other companies. Like they would build their European version of Groupon and force Groupon to buy them, phrases, competing with them. They created a knockoff version of Airbnb in Europe, and they went to Airbnb and are like, hey, we'll trade you because they had 800 employees and dozens of offices and stuff. And they said, hey, acquire us for 25% of the value of Airbnb. And now Airbnb is faced with this problem because they didn't really have a European expansion yet. And what do we do? Do we just say yes and give them 25% of our company and we get this? And, they went to their advisors and people, they talked about it, and Zuckerberg's, screw them, and other people were like, yeah, somebody else pointed out, these guys have a baby they don't want. They're trying to trade it to you because the threat. And then Airbnb said, you know what? Screw this. We're going to raise another $100 million. We're going to rapidly expand into Europe ahead of time when we wanted to do that. And they did that. And they, blitzscaled in Europe and then basically became the dominant, Airbnb type service there too. So blitzscaling. Right now I'm probably 20%, 25% into it. I'm really enjoying it. I like it because it says things that are counterintuitive, and there are people that would strongly disagree with it and say, no, it's wrong. It's not the way to build a business. But Reid Hoffman's got a pretty good track record, and to have, the number of people no, this is the real deal. It's pretty impressive.
Right on.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. So, somebody says everybody knows about those German brothers that create knockoffs. Well, the fact that we can't remember their names doesn't mean everybody knows. They're doing it 20 years. I'm surprised they have not been sued out of existence. You can't be sued for a business plan. You can try to patent that, but if you want to go do a thing, somebody makes something. If you copy the product itself, that's problematic. And Airbnb wasn't the first place to say, hey, wanna rent a couch, or want to stay here, like couch surfing, all these things. A lot of these big businesses that exist today, Uber, Airbnb, there were versions of that before, but they figured out the right one and they had the right energy. So I think these guys, totally right to do it. Opportunity. Cool. All right. Everybody good?
Yeah, we're the best.
Yep. Little Justin?
Yeah, he's good.
No, I meant you, but that's okay. It's been after.
Awesome.
That is so awesome.
That's great. That's so cute. Do they normally make custom plushes or?
No, I think that she just did that. I think she just wanted to try it, but
Wow.
initially she wanted to do like a Tickle Me Elmo kind of thing, but then decided on having the props be the voice boxes because apparently it was too hard to do it in the doll. But she made one for Scott, Brian, and I think somebody else on the instance, but and Dunaway maybe. But yeah, she crushed it. It's so funny.
That's very sweet. We'll be back in a couple hours with more streams. We got Cord Killers. You doing jury later today?
Yeah, jury's at 3, so I'm gonna eat for an hour and then I'm gonna go do the jury.
You got anything coming up, Andrew?
I've got the next book, Murder Theory, comes out in February. You can pre-order now. Pre-order Murder Theory, the third Theo Cray. I am bracing myself for reaction to this book.
Yeah?
Because
You think it'll be controversial?
I
Polarizing?
Yeah, there's it's the darkest and probably the most, a lot more, little bits of more humor. Not a lot like it's laugh a minute. It's like maybe like 3 or 4 funny things in there, but it's like dark.
Oh, okay. Well,
Dark for Theo. Dark. How far will this guy go?
Yeah, well, hold on. Spoilers here, but dark for the dude who desecrated and mangled a body to fake his own death. Right, okay.
all right.
Imagine that. Yes. You picked a great example, Brian, because there's stuff I'm going like, well, this makes sense, and you can see his logic to doing this, but
Pre-order now. Well, one more time. What's it called?
Murder Theory.
Murder Theory. Hey, look it
Murder
up.
Theory.
Alrighty, guys. Well, we'll see you in a bit. Thank you for watching.
Bye, gang.
See ya.